So I'm about halfway through Ash Princess, which is the first book in the Ash Princess trilogy. So far there's some interesting ideas, and you have this whole fantasy world, and you have this map here that kind of shows you the world. And so this follows a princess of Australia. Her name is Theodora, Theo, or I'm sorry, not Theodora, Theodosia, who goes by Theo. She has been renamed Thora. And so the whole premise of this book is that you have Calovaxia, which is a very warlike country. They like to conquer other countries. And so they came to Australia and they conquered it. And they killed a lot of people to conquer it. One of who, of course, was Theodosia's mother. Obviously, she was queen for Theodosia to be princess. And this is where I start to have issues with it. Why was Theodosia kept alive? They're very worried about rebels throughout, the whole half the book that I've read. Theodosia is punished for the rebel activities. Whenever they do something, she's whipped. Okay, my issues with this is, one, I'm pretty sure the rebels don't know she's being punished. So, the punishment does no good for that. Then, for another thing, if the rebels are so attached to her, why is she left alive? I mean, there's absolutely nothing where the Calvoxians are trying to do anything to get along with the Australians. They came and they conquered. That is all it is. The Australians are not only a conquered people, they're turned into slaves. They're used to be servants and to dig up these gems in mines. Now that is one thing that's interesting. There's 4 mines in Australia, and you actually get a little map of Australia here too. And there's one for each of the 4 typical elements: fire, air, earth, and water. So basically, in in Australia, there's multiple gods, and there's magic. And the way this magic is used is, it is somewhat innate, but if you have a gem that is imbued with earth, air, water, or fire, you can control those elements much better. And so that part was interesting, but we don't get a whole lot into it. And, like I said, I don't understand why they bothered to keep Theodosia alive. Because she just seems to be far too much, if the Calvoxians are to be believed, she's far too dangerous. She can lead the rebels, and the rebels will rally behind her. But then, like I said, even though there are rebels, and as we learn a little more, they do seem to rally behind her, her punishment is not deterring them, because they don't know about it. The only ones who ever see the punishment are the other Calvoxians. So I guess perhaps this is a way for the Calvoxian Kaiser to show his power to his people, because they're very warlike people, and now that he has conquered Australia, he doesn't want to do much, and this has made some of his people unhappy, so I guess that could be part of it, but it's not really dived into enough. And then, of course, we have a love triangle. There is an Australian boy named Blaze, and he was a childhood companion of Theodosia's. And then you have the Australian prince, and his name is Sorin. And so it starts out, Theodosia has a plan to get more information about what the Calvoxians are planning, and she also has a plan to incite a civil war. And these plans both involve Prince Sorin. So, for both of them, she has to earn his trust, possibly seduce him, at least somewhat, so that she can get the information. And then to make the civil war, she's going to kill him and make it look like his father, the Kaiser, did it. Because there's a faction in court who supports Prince Sorin because he's young. He's like 17 or 18. And he has gone out to fight. Whereas the Kaiser is a little bit older and he hasn't really gone out to fight. So, of course, the Calvoxians, valuing the fighting, are more, some of them are more for the prince. So, knowing this whole plan and knowing that he has gone out and fought and helped enslave people, they have a meetup, Theodosia and he, and he takes my hand as easily as breathing, as if he's done it 1,000 times before. Though I know this is all part of a game I'm orchestrating, a part of me wants to let go, not because this touch is repulsive, but because it should be and isn't. Just as Artemisia pointed out, this is the son of a man who destroyed everything and everyone I love. The boy who slaughtered 9 of my people because his father told him to. I shouldn't like the feel of his hand in mine, but I do. And a little bit of backstory to this. This is only the 3rd interaction she's had with Prince Sorin. And she learned that when he was 9 or 10 years old, his father had 10 Australian prisoners. His father killed one to show Prince Sorin how it was done. He made Prince Sorin kill the other 9. That's what she's referring to when he's killed 9 of my people. The only remorse he has shown for that is the fact that he can remember all 10 of their names. And he's really not done much to earn her trust like that. Like, that was just completely and totally insta-love. And the same thing with Blaze. They have, he has said that Prince Sorin said he wanted to meet her that evening. That scene that I just read was the start of it. And she tells Blaze this, and they assume, obviously, that there's going to be some kissing and such. And Blaze says, this shouldn't be your first kiss with him. So he kisses her. And it's not quite as emotional as what I just read, where she's like, oh, I like the feel of his hand in mine, and so on and so forth. She's just confused with Blaze. But it's still, both sides of this love triangle are insta-love. And then with the Prince Sorin side, I can't get over how none of the history between them was overcome for this to happen. So that's really irking me. So right now, I'm thinking this is probably maybe going to be a 2.5 stars because I'm halfway through, and in all honesty, not much has happened. And some of the stuff that has happened, like when Theo is forced to kill her father, it seems like it's almost more for shock value than to have anything to do with the plot. Because her father's death doesn't change the plot at all. Had he still been living, he might have opposed her plan at first, for Prince Sorin, but I do think after a little bit of talking, he would have said go ahead and do it because, he seemed like it is a good plan in a way. It is a good plan to try and get information. But it's just, the insta-love and the nothing really important to the plot and just kind of the gratuitous shock value of the violence is just not my cup of tea at all. So this was kind of a long ramble for only half the book, but I will be back with my thoughts on the end of this book and the other two, and I'll see you back in the book cave then. So I finished Ash Princess and started Lady Smoke. So the last half of Ash Princess was a little bit better. There's a lot less of the love triangle, although there's still an awful lot of Theo mooning over Sorin, and he still really didn't do anything to redeem himself. And I really didn't buy the romance between them. And then we have her best friend Cress, and I felt like their whole plan to kill the Thayan was a solid plan. It makes sense. He's like, I guess, basically the highest general, you would say. And he's also the one who always whips Theo whenever she's punished. And so to kill him does kind of make sense. But then as for Cress is more or less innocent. I mean, she never tried to stop the punishments. She never speaks to Theo about them. But she also has never instigated one. She's never instigated a punishment. And she doesn't, she seems to be relatively innocent. And and then I do feel like the revolution kind of just wants to kill Cress because they feel like that will prove Theo's loyalty. And I can understand why Theo was so hesitant to do it. I mean, Cress has been her best friend for 10 years, from the time they were 6. Although I do find that a little hard to believe as well, considering Cress is the Thane's daughter. However, I could definitely see, the way Cress did reach out during everything. And when Theo wore the ash crown, she made it into, like, war paint. I could see how that would make Theo very attached to her. However, I do feel like Cress shows her true colors when she threatens Theo. That, I know what you're doing and I will tell on you if you don't stop. So I do feel like Cress really isn't that great of a friend. Although, again, you don't really see that till the second half. And then, so they wind up kidnapping Surin. And of course, Theo is very against this. And that is where the first book ends. And then in the second book, it opens with them all being on Dragonbane's ship. And Dragonbane is a notorious pirate who has done a lot for the revolution. And then it does turn out that she is actually not only Theo's aunt, but her and Theo's mother were twin sisters. So, of course, that brings up some confusing feelings for Theo. And it's pretty obvious as well that Dragonsbane kind of has her own ideas. And it sounds like we're going to get into some very political maneuvering. Right now they're headed to another country where a bunch of princes and lords are going to basically vie for Theo's hand in marriage. And Australian queens usually do not marry. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how this book plays out. And I'm hoping that the love triangle part is very much toned down and we get more into this political side. So I will update you all when I read a little bit more. I finished Lady Smoke, and I do have to say I enjoyed it more than Ash Princess. The whole love triangle took a back seat. It was still there, but it wasn't as pronounced. I didn't entirely enjoy the, let's make a political match plot that was most of the book. But that was more of a me problem than the book problem. Like, I did think it was at least relatively well written, and the way all the suitors acted, I felt like would be relatively realistic. And then I do find it interesting how now we have Theo with her powers growing, and no, we don't really have any answers about why her powers are growing and why, though she's yet still weak. And I do find it pretty obvious they found a fire and a water overly strong, I guess for lack of a better term, guardian. And then, of course, you have Blaze, who is the Earth one. So I can only assume that there's going to be an Air one, and some way all four of these will come together to defeat the Kalavoxians. And yeah, another thing I did find a little odd is that we find out from Eric that the Gorakians, their land has been utterly decimated, and there's only about 2,000 of them left. I don't understand why the Kalavoxians do this. You conquer a land, you enslave their people. Why? And I guess I kind of get it because it's not the Kalavoxians' land, so what do they care if it becomes desolate? But why don't they take those people with them? Like, all of them. Their resources as well. And again, it just kind of feels like cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And they're not really thinking this through. that, we could still use them in other countries. And you'd think that eventually, after all the countries they decimated, they would get a little better. But evidently not. They still just come in and not only destroy the people, but destroy the land. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to get into book 3 and see if we do get some answers, but I'm not entirely convinced we will. But yeah, I will update you all when I start book 3 and let you know if there are any answers and what they are if they're forthcoming. I finished Ember Queen, and I do have to say, I think that was the best book of the trilogy. I felt like the stakes were pretty high, and I did feel like Theo had a lot of character development. She became much stronger, much surer of herself. I still felt like the whole love triangle with her, Blaze, and Surin was a little bit drawn out, and I still felt no real connection with them, like we were told, but I didn't really see it, to be quite honest. But I did like the rest of the book, and I thought the changed dynamic with her and Cress added a, really interesting element to the book and some interesting commentary on, love and hate and friendship and all of that. And I think it also did a good job of showing, some of the ways that, just how bad war is and how sometimes it can just continue on and on and on. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this series, or about this particular book at least. Overall, it wasn't a bad series. I do think I would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't read quite as many YA fantasies and dystopians. And another thing I definitely would have liked would be a bigger exploration of the magic system. I found that really interesting, with having the water, earth, fire, and air magics, and then the gems that can help control these, and the way that the mind madness works. They say, you can imagine that some people are filled basically up to the very brim. Every time they use magic, it's like putting heat under that pot that's full to the brim. If it boils, it's going to spill out and basically turn into mind madness. One thing I did feel, though, in the book, and this is a huge spoiler for the end of the book, so go ahead and stop here if you don't want to hear this spoiler. But I felt like Blaze's death at the end was not that well done. I feel like I didn't feel like he had to die. I mean, I understand in a way they're saying that because he was this pot that was almost full, the more he used, and he did use a lot of magic in that scene, he would have lost all control. But I didn't feel the urgency of it. And yeah, that scene I feel like could have had more depth. You could have shown better for how he lost control. So yeah, that is my thoughts on this series, and I'm going to put a book haul video up after this one, so I will see you all in that video, and then I will see you next time in the book cave.